right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next live session. Today, we are thrilled to have Broza with us. And I'm going to do a quick background, and then I'll hand it over to Liam to kind of give us a more detailed background about what he's working on recently. But Leon is or was one of the co-founders for Ethereal Engine. Currently, he's the founder of Companion Intelligence, Ethereal Engine. So it would be great to kind of have you give us a brief about how you got to where you are. So I'm going to go ahead and hand over to you to give us kind of like a fill in the blanks over there, and then we'll go from there.
I can hear you, but I can't see you. But it's great to see everybody. Hi. Yes, I was the founder with Kyle Barron and a few others of Ethereal Engine, which in my opinion is the world's best 3D web engine. And we really wanted to bring the best of the web 3D, web XR, the ability to do augmented reality and virtual reality on the web, the universalness of being able to click on the web and on a on a link on a website and just go directly into an experience. That's really the magic of the web. And we wanted to make that multiplayer, make that fully embodied with characters, add voice and video, and add XR capabilities right at anybody's website, allow people to develop whatever they could imagine. And that was called XR Engine. We then named it Ethereal Engine so we could actually trademark the name and build a brand around the project. And then at the beginning of last year, we ended up merging with Infinite Reality, and it's now called IR Engine. And it's a free and open source 3D web engine, really comparable to Roblox. It has a builder like Roblox, has a full-on editor. If you download the open source version, you can do scripting, you can do XR. It has tons and tons of capabilities and customization tools. And there is a easy-to-use AI-powered hosted version that IR has released a beta of. You can go to Infinite Reality and check out. And new versions coming out this year with more AI, more shopping, more digital characters, and all sorts of things. I left Infinite Reality around November, really to work on embodied agents, which are like LLM-powered agents put into actual 3D characters, and also given other embodiments like drones, like robots, and taught about the 3D world and how to interact with it. Also using some other techniques of machine learning and data processing that I've been working on for a long time. And I'm working on a company called Companion Intelligence, and we just launched AI servers that you can go buy at companionintelligence.com, and they come with agents, and soon to have embodied 3D agents that are powered currently by Ready Player Me, soon to be other avatar and embodiment backends. And they're open, they're accessible, they're customizable, and they have 1,000,001 use cases, including like XR interfaces. Like I'm very actively building on Unity to build some cool early embodied agents in the Quest and in the XReal. So that's very high level, kind of what I've been up to in XR for the last few years.
Super. Thanks for that detailed background, Liam. And it's always a pleasure to get in touch with you. I'm not sure exactly what's happening on my end. I see myself on the screen, but it seems like it's not being broadcasted on the actual live stream. But we can continue. Important thing here is the actual conversation. So I want us to kind of go back to like where you actually started, right? Like day one.
Sure.
And, like what triggered you to actually go down this path? What was like that particular key moment that you decided, you know what, this is what I want to do for the rest of, like from that particular point that you initiated this ventures and you have been part of several successful ventures. What was that key trigger moment?
It was really I was in and then I was out. It really started as a kid playing tons of 3D games. I had a friend, Ian, growing up, who introduced me to the world of modding games. Mech Warrior, Unreal Tournament, all had really pretty great accessible tools, and that led to like early 3D Max. When I went into school, I went in for computer engineering. I wanted to work on chips. I went to RIT, Rochester Institute, because it had the largest clean room for students in the world, where you could actually put on bunny suits and use Canon's old forges, foundries, to actually make chips, which was really cool experience to learn hardware description languages, how graphics cards and microelectric engineering and chips work. But as I really started to round out a bachelor's, I started to talk to people at all sorts of companies back then: Intel, Nvidia, AMD, even I think ATI was still around really back then, before it was like pre-merger. And I was talking to people in the computer graphics hardware industry, and they were essentially saying, "Oh, well, unless you're a PhD, you're going to be a test engineer. And even if you are a PhD, you're going to be like essentially an apprentice till your mid 30s, and you'll work on like one chip for years and years. And then
Yeah.
maybe you'll get to man your own chip. And if you're really in charge of it, you'll be with it for years while it's developed, several years while it's in the market, and then you'll be kind of responsible for it for several more years as it's supported by enterprise and becomes a legacy product. And maybe you'll do 4 or 5 chips in your entire career." And at
Mm.
the same time, I had a lot of brilliant friends of mine who had taken similar classes, who were more on the software side, doing software engineering or
Yeah.
computer science. And they were like, "I came up with an idea on Thursday. We launched the company website on Friday. We're gonna get funded this weekend, and we'll exit next week." And it was like it was an absolute like fever pitch in
Yeah.
2005, 6, 7, 8, is the absolute explosion of Facebook, while at the same time being at the time of the last major economic downturn. And
Mm.
I just was salivating over software. So I essentially switched into software. A lot of the friends I went to school with at RIT were under like Alex Kipman, and went on the Microsoft Research, which was the Connect, the HoloLens. I knew a lot of people in those projects, early Oculus, who were kind of in my peer group. But at the time, I actually went into big data. I went into defense work. I went into
Yeah.
sensors and all sorts of other things. I lived in DC, and Baltimore and New York, and I worked in a lot in corporate and medical, namely because I saw I kind of missed the boat. All my friends wanted to take this big risk on XR, and it didn't pay well, and I was coming out of school and things like that. But I was wildly envious of all of them, and I stayed really close. I bought the Vive right when it came out. I bought the Daydream and the Gear VR and the Connect and everything that I could possibly get my hands on, and I would dev in my free time, or try to like connect or port some of my other big data projects into XR. But I was kind of just lurking. I did a lot of work with like 3D Web, but it was mainly it was nothing like XR. And it was really around um, the magic. I got to see one of the first ML1 Magic Leaps before they were like open to the public. I don't know if I should say who showed it to me, but I got to see it really early, and saw what they were building. It was actually on Unity, because that's all that worked out of the box at first. And I realized it was really quite good. It was a step change better than the HoloLens. I could actually like socialize, which I couldn't do on any other VR headset. The setup, it was inside out 6 DoF tracking with decent hand tracking. Really was like kind of opened the door that we were actually like building something pretty viable. I kind of lament that the Magic Leap wasn't more broad, because I think it was a very viable product, even though it was very expensive. But that was kind of the moment, probably 2017, 2018. where I decided I'm going to start building products. I'm going to learn this stuff. I'm going to start doing work in XR. And it started with like Unity and 3JS, and kind of went from there. Uh, I kind of was in the right place at the right time during pandemic. I had started to play with Mozilla Hubs, if you remember Mozilla Hubs, and multiplayer Unity stuff on Photon. And it just pandemic came down, and I was my co-founder and I were doing a lot of consulting, and we just had our phones ring off the hook with people asking for 3D worlds, mainly on the web, all multiplayer, that could accompany like a Zoom call like this. And because no one could go anywhere, do anything, they couldn't educate, they couldn't run conferences, they couldn't run showrooms, they couldn't be social, anything. So that was a massive sea change. And I really, in 2020, started to orient towards what would it take to master multiplayer 3D worlds on the web with the best experience, the best graphics. And that was really about a 5-year journey for me, starting around pandemic. But yeah, before that, it was all big data and AI. That was pretty long-winded.
Awesome. Again, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what's going on today, but my internet is acting up. But let's go ahead. So that's great. So having a hardware background and switching over to software, I think that's an advantage actually. I think that's
Yeah, it is a good perspective to have, knowing the there's a lot of like magic that goes on in modern software stacks. Like Unity, for example, has like many layers of compilers, transpilers, polyfills, shims, different languages all stacked on top of each other, and understanding this deep stack, and how all the small pieces fit together, I found to be really, really helpful. There's not enough, there's so much to learn on all the high level tools that nowadays that didn't really happen 10, 20, 30 years ago, where there was much more time in people's education to learn hardware, and hardware is much simpler, so it's much easier to understand. And I feel like I was kind of in a sweet spot at RIT and Carnegie Mellon and other places I studied, to be able to focus on a lot of those fundamentals, and bringing the engineering back to first principles, and like primitive set theory, and just talking about the data structures, really helps simplify a lot of problems, where I see a lot of engineers in this space who are very clever kind of get wrapped around the axles of the complexity of high level frameworks, and always trying to solve things in like a high level framework. So but it's a really, really exciting time right now in hardware. Like the amount of new sensors being invented, the price of sensors, the price of motors, the price of optics, going down so much, means we're going to have incredible XR gear, incredible sensors, incredible robots, incredible batteries and supercapacitors and things like that.
Yeah.
Very, very soon. So yeah.
Jump into the present. I would say, like, when you kind of started out, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced? And I think we actually, I kind of forgot to mention this. The way we met was actually in one of those. It was in Burbank, if you recall. It was at Woodbury, where there was a VC pitch for AI, and then I met you over there, and you were one of the only guys that was doing XR. I'm like, okay, this is cool. Let me go and see what they're up to, and that's how I became to know you and to get familiar with Ethereal Engine. So I know you from that perspective. So and then over the years, of course, you guys had a successful. I believe you guys exited, right? Like
correct. We exited around this time last year. Yep. And yeah, I remember taking you through our studios. We were throwing great parties in our Santa Monica studios. I'm actually going to try to help relaunch that office with Refactor Games, another and Unreal dev house. So
Yeah, I'm always looking forward to those parties. Whenever time permits, I try to join them. Sometimes due to other obligations, I have to skip. But in those early days for Ethereal Engine, what were some of the challenges that you guys as a team faced, or you as a core founder
yeah.
or one of the co-founders faced?
I think there's a lot. I'd start with the technical stuff from a very high level. One of the reasons we decided to build our own engine was through a really telling conversation we had with some Google Chrome and Firefox engineers at the W3C at TPAC. And I believe that we had another conversation. I think it was at MetaConnect, but it was a series of conversations we had with the browser makers who are building the underlying 3D web engines like Angle, the almost native graphics layer engine, which powers WebGL, and the other tool chains like GW that like power WebGPU that's like essentially still in development. And we were talking about like, hey, who runs the best 3D web engine? And they listed off all the kind of major ones and what they do well and what they don't. But they mainly said either every 3D web engine out there is kind of meant for native and ported to web and leaves a lot of performance on the floor, or it's over a decade old and has a bunch of technical debt and doesn't use the latest browser features and language techniques and things like that, and is leaving a lot of performance on the floor.
Mhm.
So you see this like overhead in the web of 20, 30, 40% frame loss, where you build essentially the same thing or load the same model with the same shaders on a like native Vulkan versus web GPU, and you'll see this gap in performance and frame rate and draw time. And generally, a lot of that overhead could be closed. And we thought that was incredible news to really talk to the browser makers and understand exactly what performance was being left on the table. And it's the same thing with like multiplayer networking. The techniques that are used in multiplayer networking and web games are really primitive compared to like modern 3D AAA games. The way they do media, a lot of the way they do social. We saw a lot of opportunities to massively improve from a technical and DevX and user experience perspective what a 3D web engine could be. So that was a interesting and huge challenge to kind of hot rod the web browsers and squeeze out all the performance and capability from them. And I think we essentially collected over 100 tricks that we use in IR Engine, Ethereal Engine. From a business side, it's games in 3D are very complicated from a business execution standpoint. There's been a massive flood of games. We're kind of going through a kind of bubble popping that came out of games.
Mhm.
There's a huge bubble that grew and is now popping out of game investments in the last 5 years. Like venture
Mhm.
capital is investing in games now. They're investing in Roblox games. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And a lot of games are flopping, like Concord and 100 other examples of games, huge AAA budgets that aren't seeing the returns.
Wow.
So, but immerse. So we were looking very hard at multiplayer 3D games, and we really decided to go into the niche of shopping, brand activations, brand experiences, education, essentially the everything else you could do with a game engine. And
Sure.
that started off with consulting. Like really, it was me and a few others really um, building. Like I got into the web 3D consulting business, and really
Yeah.
built a niche around multiplayer, around adding voice and video. And through that, we were able to mature our internal toolbox into a platform. And if we had done it the other way, where we went out and actually just tried to build a platform, um, one, it would have been very hard to get money and keep a lot of the company. It would have been very hard to it would have been very hard to get an investor on board for the big vision that we wanted to build. They would have told us to narrow it into something kind of mediocre,
Yeah.
and it would have. And we probably would have built it wrong because we would not have. We probably would have built it in somewhat of a vacuum in the back room. Whereas being completely at every moment forced to deal with everyday problems of making immersive experiences a success, I think it really shaped the engine into something special. It shaped the product into the platform into something special. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's many, many more issues, but that we ran into. But I think those are the big ones. Yeah.
Great, great. Thanks for that. And then fast forward to today. What are some of the most exciting things that you're working on? I mean, based on what I you mentioned to us, like your background in the hardware side and then switching over to software, and now you co-founding the companion intelligence, which is kind of pushing the what NVIDIA calls like physical AI. Uh, is what is that uh, kind of the way you're moving towards, or is it a
Yep.
little? Is there like a different kind of a
Okay, here, let me take it. I can definitely answer this. Yeah, really, what is exciting to me is, as I left IR, I was essentially we were looking at using generative AI in new ways where we could mix an LLM, generative models like text to 3D models
yeah,
and procedural generation, like you would see in No Man's Sky or SimCity or something like that, and mixing those three elements together to be able to talk to and shape worlds, world generation. And there's several people doing world generation, but I spent a lot of the last year really on some new new spins on those techniques, and I are still working on them, and I excited to see all of that stuff release this year. Uh, since then, I've really seen kind of a critical need for personal AI. There's Microsoft Copilot, Apple Intelligence, Galaxy AI. There's a lot of proprietary personal AI agents that are being pushed by all the major corporations. And I think these agents are double agents. They're not really there for you. They're there to manipulate and sell things to you. And I think it's going to be very important to have like a deep relationship with a personal AI to stay competitive in the next few years. And I want one that explicitly works for me, that I can control and is the best one. So looking out at the landscape, I really felt I could build something special in terms of a personal AI, and have been working on it. We're starting to sell home servers that you can check out at companionintelligence.com. You can buy them, bring them home, and they are a agent server that runs your own personal AI, keeps your own digital memory, and acts as a workbench as well, where you can run the latest generative models or uh, run any machine learning workload you like in the privacy of your own home, with the power to run major LLMs like Llama or DeepSeek or Quen or Mistral or any of the large models, without having to give your data up to companies like OpenAI and Meta,
yeah,
up on their servers, because that's really the game with OpenAI and Copilot and everything is they're OpenAI is easiest one to talk against. They only make about 20 some odd $million a month off subscriptions, but they're
mhm,
burning 20 some odd billion or whatever, but they burn like a multiple of that. I forget how much money it is. It's something like 10 times as much money they burn a month as they bring in. And that's not a business. The reason they do that is to get your data. They're not making money. They're never going to make money off the subscriptions. They need the data now to build the AI in the future. That is the real money.
correct.
And you're the well to be pumped. And I think people need an option where they can be competitive and have access to AI without just being endlessly pumped to train this thing that's going to replace them. I mean, Sam Altman and others say their plan is by 2030 to replace 51% of the workforce, and they have very
Mhm.
nebulous idea on how that's going to be good for you. So this is an existential problem that I want to solve. Our team wants to solve with really open AI, really personal and distributed AI, and it doesn't get more distributed
Mhm.
than in your house and in your business and on your hardware. And that's going to require XR as well. So we're all going to have cameras on our face, headsets on our head in the next few years. I have an X-Real Ultra. It's quite incredible. I have a Quest 3. It's
Mhm.
quite incredible. And if it's
Mhm.
hearing through my ears and seeing through my eyes, and like knowing what I'm up to and every object in my house, I want that to stay local to me. I want to be able to
Correct.
enjoy the powers of XR without having to use Meta's spatial cloud or Google's spatial cloud or Microsoft's spatial cloud, being constantly mapped and tagged. So that's the stack I'm building right now. I'll be at Scale, which is a big open source Linux conference in Pasadena next week, where I'll be showing more, and there'll be even more announcements. So I'm really excited. Actually, it's daunting, but it's really
That's cool.
exciting.
Which
Yeah,
which day is your presentation?
I believe I speak at 2 and 4 on March 6th in the personal AI track. So yeah,
Excellent, excellent. I think
yeah,
March 6th. I'm gonna let me see. Oh, that's perfect. I'm actually open that day, so I'll
excellent.
I'll
Well,
try to stop by. Yeah, that would be great. No, this is really great. I mean, there's a bunch of really key points that you talked about, and I think a lot of people, AI is kind of one of those things that it is here, it is going to be with us. The question is how we adapt it and how we utilize it in our daily lives, right? So a lot of people, I do get a lot of people that are afraid of it, but I think we shouldn't be afraid of it. We just need to understand uh, its use from a productivity perspective, but then also a key area which is privacy, which you kind of touch based on. I think that is the primary concern from my perspective.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, it's neither good nor bad. It's how we implement it. It could be very good or very bad, depending on how it's put into this world. And this is the formative moment where we're going to decide how it's incorporated in our lives. And we all need to be educated and participate because it's going to be much more, I'm sure as you know, XR and AI are going to be far more important than these phones. These phones are going to
Yeah,
be a kind of a footnote in history compared to what happens this decade.
at least in our view, right? I mean, that's
And
that's kind of I think that the combination of the XR, or what we call the metaverse, it could be like a wholesome umbrella, but XR and the AI integration with the XR environment, I think that would be uh, totally next level. So eventually we are going to get there. Hopefully this year with the announcement of Android XR and Samsung also getting into.
oh yes, yeah, with Google Next, IR will be there as well. But yes, Google
Yeah,
Next is going to be very big, I think, along with a lot of other announcements this year. Yeah, so very cool. I'm excited to be building a company right now. So,
yeah, absolutely. So going back to your childhood, what were some of the? I mean, all of us like have grown up with great science fiction movies, uh,
oh yes,
and we actually see those become reality, right? And I'm sure like a lot of us, like people in our age group, or even a little older or younger, they kind of had that vision, right? They were kind of like moving towards that reality, right? So the science fiction is now becoming a science fact. And I always thought that Hollywood was always there to kind of prepare the mass population to
Yeah, to prepare the mass population, like a hyperstiction, a prediction of the future. Yeah.
Yeah.
I my childhood movies, I loved Back to the Future growing up, loved Star Wars. I think being able to travel back in time, even digitally, even virtually, is going to be very
Yeah.
interesting. Something I like, I think about. I was a huge Star Trek geek. Um, I flipped out over VR really in mental reference to the holodeck in Star Trek. So
Mm,
watching The Next Generation as a kid.
yeah.
And yeah, and every time I'm in Google Earth or Kayak VR or any of those, I get deep holodeck vibes. So
Absolutely. Very cool. Um, yeah. So I mean, and I think we had quite a bit of discussion going on, from on the AI market here in USA.
what do I think of the AI market here in the USA? Is that the question?
Yeah, based on DeepSeek from that was
Yeah.
released. Yeah.
What do I think of what's going on? Yeah, I mean, the market valuations we see right now are absolutely insane. That the entire market in the US runs on the idea that that has been invalidated by DeepSeek, that I think everybody agrees on, which is, Sam Altman, Satya Nadella, NVIDIA, AMD, all of them have been floating on the idea that there is a chip supremacy plan. That if we just have
Yeah.
better chips and more of them, we're going to win. But there is insane bloat in these large language models. They are essentially just shoveling, the law of large numbers and gradient descent to try to brutally extract out knowledge. There's no actually semantic knowledge embedding. Everything's still going through languages. I was having a conversation about how I have this absolutely super expensive, incredible MacBook in front of me, but it's actually hard to find even the major models compiled in such a way that they'll run on the Mac neural chip
Mm,
in such a way that will actually use its its power properly. I'm running Llama through kind of a virtualization engine, and most people are when they run it on their Mac.
yeah.
That's relatively slow, and that's just because the actual hard work of tuning, optimizing, compiling, retraining is being done by a very small percentage of people in the AI ecosystem. And like most of them are building on the very top layers of technologies, um, running under these kind of blind assumptions that they need, you know, uh, OpenAI O3 high, turbo or whatever to parse a PDF or something. So
Yeah.
it's the amount of compute spent to do a very simple task is kind of insane. It's massively
Yeah.
disproportionate, and there's going to be a lot of what they call in AI right sizing, which is like, it's very easy to use an overpowerful tool to complete a simple job to get an MVP done.
Yeah.
But when you actually have to launch something at scale and you need to make money, you need to make margins,
Yeah.
it's suddenly you're having to rebuild everything, and it's much, much
Yeah.
harder. So, and a lot of people learn they don't need OpenAI. They don't need these huge companies for almost anything that they don't need any of these huge language models for almost anything their company does, to
Yeah.
harness the power of AI. And I think that like sober wake up call is going to shock the industry. I think the biggest teller right now is Apple just released a report saying they're downsizing their AI footprint in the cloud. And they're
Interesting.
launching Apple Intelligence and a whole IoT platform. So, like,
Yeah.
why is that? Why do they think they already have the compute they need? So
Correct.
uh,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. I
very
think
interesting
that's the
times.
biggest. Absolutely. I think that's the biggest
Oh man, we keep losing you. But yeah, I think it's the biggest talk of our age right now, because if I do believe in the potential of AI. I think it will transform the economy. I'm betting my career on it. But I think that the way that the capital is deployed is wrong, and people are going to lose a lot of money because there's going to be a massive upset. But it, just like '99, like it didn't mean that the internet, the dot-com bubble didn't mean that the internet wasn't awesome and transformative to the economy. It just meant the capital was deployed all wrong. So
Exactly, exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Very cool. What would be some of your uh, recommendations or suggestions to younger people that would want to get into the industry? What would be some of the areas that you would recommend them to kind of study, to concentrate on? Let's say they
Sure.
are in their teens, going to college. What is some of the suggestions, or what would you recommend to them to kind of focus on?
Python is a really great language to get started in, and it's a great way to open the door to machine learning and beyond. I think TypeScript is another great language to get started in. It's harder, but there's tons of tooling, and it gets you to be able to build on almost anything. So you can, if you want to make a game, you want to make an app, you want to make a website, you want to make a native app, like whatever, TypeScript will open a lot of doors. And there's just a lot of documentation for both of those. Tons of great videos, great examples. You don't need to pay for anything. Build a great GitHub portfolio, build a portfolio website, launch an app or two. And I some of the Having just built multiple teams, I can tell you that some of our star performers had no formal education, and
Yeah,
in fact, they were better than some of our highly educated, possibly overeducated,
yeah,
came from a good school engineers, and literally had a lot stronger tenacity to be like an autodidact and to learn, and to
got it.
be, yeah. So I would say
Yeah.
learn how to learn. You know.
Yeah, and actually that's where kind of I was going to, like, how would like a young individual
Well,
you
I
just
lost
need to
some.
know one or two things, but now it's like a full spectrum of, you know, different frameworks, different APIs, different SDKs, and combining all of these things together to kind of make something meaningful, right? And so that's one challenge that they are facing, and the second challenge is that right now there's so much, I would say, competition in a way, right? Like how would you how can they like this how can they uniquely position themselves so that, let's say, they are visible uh, to the hiring managers, right, to the right people that are the decision makers and are trying to build successful teams and etc.
Number one thing I say is always be building something on the side to learn. I have a lot of aggregators of all sorts of tech news and technology frameworks, and I set aside time a few times a week to go through them. I bookmark what I find most interesting, and then I either go find tutorial videos on XYZ technology that I look through, or I go and actually play with it. And I set aside a time once a week to actually go play
Yeah,
with things and get knowledgeable. It's very there's a lot of tenacity you have to do to get hired, but it starts with um, you know y- you're just going to have to put in extra work,
doing the work,
especially earlier in your career.
right?
Even if you have a full-time job, you're
Absolutely.
going to have to spend a few hours a
These
week
side projects. Yeah,
going and learning, and that's best encapsulated in a side project with that's usually pretty small, under 100 hours of something that you can pop out every few times a year, every year, to show that you're learning. Those are huge
absolutely.
differentiators, and being able to talk about like how you're creating value at your company. That's one thing that, like, it's very hard for some XR engineers to wrap their head around, of like the difference between telling your boss, "Hey, look at this cool, pretty thing I made," and explaining how that thing changes the bottom line of their company.
Yeah,
So
very cool. Thank you, Liam. I really appreciate you taking the time to joining us. I sincerely apologize. We had some technical issues and hiccups here. And unfortunately, I don't know why, for some reason, my internet wasn't as solid as it usually is. And more importantly, my camera, for whatever reason, stopped working. So I was looking forward to this conversation, because I think there's a lot of really insight, and you have a lot of knowledge, and you have a pretty extensive background that you can share with the community, and hopefully people out there can, learn from your experience. So thank you for spending the time.
well, we'll have to do it again sometime and get us both on camera. I'll have more to share soon, and I'm excited to see you next week. And I'm going to be throwing more parties in LA this year. It's a hot tip to anybody out in the gaming industry, which is you're going to have to get out from the basement and socialize. And if you're in SoCal, you're in LA, you're in San Francisco, you're in a prime place to talk to other people in game development and advance your career. So, yeah, hopefully see you at GDC as well. So take it easy.
Absolutely. Thank you
All
very
right,
much, Liam. Have a good one.
later.
Bye bye.
Bye.